Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. We know in manufacturing, when we have a good trust on the team and things are going well, we're focused on the goal, and it usually happens pretty darn well. And when we don't, and we're kind of questioning on what the other department's doing, or is someone else trying to get credit, things seem to go awry, and we don't get as good as results. So I brought in my friend, expert speaker, author of 5 books, Justin Patton, who I talked to about trust and those concepts and leadership. And welcome, Justin.
Thanks, Trevor. Super excited to be here. Everyone listening or watching, grateful to be here and to be able to connect with you in this forum.
And, Justin is a lucky guest in 5 years in mindfulness manufacturing because he gets to record this episode twice because we're doing this one over Zoom and we did the first one in person. And I had some technical issues on an echo and, just staying on brand. And Justin, I just appreciate you coming and doing this again for our listeners. And your voice sounds great today with no echo. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'm like, isn't that the way life works sometimes? Like things happen, things come up and that's okay. And I think we give each other some grace in relationships. And so I'm honored to be here with you and to hopefully add some value to all the people listening and watching.
Oh, I love it. And so your Road to Yes was the book that really resonated with me and I've read your books because of this whole aspect of trust in manufacturing. Yeah. And I just, you realize it, but it's not something that we're talking about, right? Like, how's our trust levels doing today? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, but when you step back and you can look at any situation where we didn't launch new equipment on time, there's some disconnect among the leadership team.
Yeah. I think everybody knows that trust is important. What I don't think everyone knows is how to intentionally build that type of trust that we all say that we really want. And so even to your point, something doesn't get launched on time or things aren't going well on a team. Trust is always built because of 3 factors. It's transparency, tact, and togetherness. It requires all 3. And I always say that trust is your biggest competitive advantage. I don't care if it's at work or even in your relationship. The only reason that is true, Trevor, is because trust is the one thing that keeps people coming back again and again, whether that's in our marriages or in our partnerships with our kiddos when they grow up and they decide to be an adult and they go off and they decide do they want a relationship with their parents or not, or our customers. Do our customers trust us that we're going to deliver what we say we're going to deliver, that the quality is going to be the same? Trust is what decides if they're going to come back and continue to engage in the relationship again and again.
And I just saw somebody tweeting saying, like, how important is transparency in your leadership? Yeah. Well, I know how important it is in yours because you're top 3.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, let me say this, and here's why. Because if trust is your biggest competitive advantage, then silence is your biggest threat. And the reason that's true is when we stay silent, and we've all been there, right? If you're listening and watching, we've all been in a relationship where someone didn't tell us all the stuff we needed. They left us second guessing. And I always say, trust never leaves people second guessing, because when they do, what we do is we start making up all these stories about what's going on. And then I think it was Brene Brown, who I just deeply admire. Mm-hmm. For those that don't know, her and Simon Sinek are probably the 2 biggest leadership people in the world right now. Yes. But Brene Brown once said, she goes, when people don't have all the information, they fill it in with fear. And it's usually so much worse than the truth actually is. And so what we do is when we're not transparent, we send everyone on this, this chase to find the truth, and they start making up stories, and it's just not healthy for any relationship. And I think that we as leaders, we as people in relationships, we can do better, and I think we deserve better in our relationships.
You took me back to a plant in Toronto, and one of my bosses was just a phone call of, hey, meet me in my office at 3:00 this afternoon. All right. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. So that's just I went right down the Brene Brown trail of like making up all the stories of what this could be. And instead of focusing on developing my team or building a relationship or making a process improvement, I'm spending time creating stories of what's going to happen at 3 o'clock in the boss's
Yeah.
office.
hmm It makes me think. I speak at a large manufacturing company in the world, and it's the hardest audience, Trevor, I've ever spoken in front of. And like all people do is kind of look at you, and I think I'm pretty engaging. I'm like, what
Yeah.
is happening? Well, afterwards, what I found out is the dealers there's this lack of mistrust with people at a certain level of leadership, and no
Mm.
one's talking to each other. And until you're willing to be transparent and put your cards to say, this is what's going on, this is what I'm feeling, and renegotiate the relationship, it's never going to get better. So how do we create spaces where I can be transparent, but I also got to be tactful and make it safe enough for other people to be able to actually express themselves or open up?
Mm.
It's important.
Yeah, and that's what we don't always look at. And I certainly didn't. That's why I really believe that I'm here serving my former self. Because there
Yeah.
may be people that have heard this podcast and said, I know Trevor from 20 years ago. He
Mhm.
wasn't mindful. And it's like,
Yeah.
they're right.
And
Because
isn't that's what I love about just life, because I'm like, that's why purpose is purpose. It's not because you got it all together, right? Or me,
Mhm.
I tell people I don't speak around communication and trust because I'm perfect or I got all the right answers. I really screwed it up. And I was younger and my dad died and I didn't know how to handle it. And so I emotionally disconnected. And I always tell people I was dead from my neck down for about 12 years of my life. But I know
Mm.
what it's like to emotionally disconnect, to not have empathy, to try to think you're going to survive by emotionally disconnecting when you're not even living at that point. And so it took all of that. It took me turning my life around from that for then to say, how do I now go help people say, what if there's another way? What if
Mm.
there's another way to engage in your relationships? To engage in the way that you treat each other at work so that you actually enjoy going to work. And so that's what now has become my purpose, not because we got it together, but because we want to help take all the good and the bad that we've ever learned and now use it to help other people. So I love that you're doing that, man.
Yeah, it's just that skill of, if I can spend enough time with you to show that I really do care,
hmm
and then I can ask that question of, so what is going on?
Yeah.
And you helped me with my talk on my son Dyson about what's beneath his dishes, and
Yeah.
that's when I was focused on his dirty dishes. He knew that I cared about him. I just had to change how I was showing up so
Yeah.
that I could find out what was really going on.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing at work. And I just, if we only have that hammer and it's like, well, I've got the position, I'm running the plant, and I can hold you accountable, but it's so much better to just be a person, right?
Yeah.
And
I've
just
worked with so many people in manufacturing leaders that will say something like this. I'm just a truth teller. I just tell people how it is. And I look at them, I go, no, you're a jerk.
Yeah,
You
you're a
are
jerk.
definitely a jerk. And
Yeah.
listen, it's because in their career and their life, they've learned to value transparency above everything else. And I love transparency. But what I've learned is you don't get to value transparency over tact.
Yeah.
And that if you value trust, then both of those things are just as equally important. So yes, I'm gonna speak my truth and you're gonna know where I stand, but I also have to take 100% responsibility for how I deliver that. And do I make it safe for other people to open up, or are they scared? And when they're scared, they're never going to tell us what they really think or feel, or they're going to sugarcoat it, or they're only
Mm.
going to tell us part of it. And that just doesn't serve the relationship. And then we get mad at them for not opening up when we didn't make it safe. It's
I
ironic.
I asked them. They didn't say anything.
Yeah.
When I had
So
them back in
like,
the corner,
hmm
and I asked them to tell them what would they really thought.
Yeah.
It's, and as I'm writing this book on manufacturing, hearing, what I'm hearing from the audience is, retention
Yeah.
and recruitment. I mean, those are the couple of big ones. I always think of engagement, but
Sure.
I'm hearing more of that retention, and just the skills that was needed even 5 to 10 years ago. I see them shifting, and because I get a lot of questions around, well, there's a lot of jerks in manufacturing that have very high positions, and I see them get promoted, and I'm like, yes, and that's not going to continue. Like I don't think that's going to continue to be sustainable in manufacturing. If we really want to focus on retention, doing more of that command control, they're being successful in spite of their skills to build trust.
Yeah, well, Skip, I'm going to offer another take to it.
Sure. That's
So
fine.
here is, I remember that one of the most honest, toughest questions I was ever asked in a room. We were talking about trust and authenticity, all this stuff that you and I talk about. And this gentleman in the middle of the room raises his hand and he goes, all right. And you know what's coming, right? He's like, all right. He's like, I get it. He goes, but if all this is true, then why do so many jerks make it to the top?
Yeah, there you go.
And he's right. And I will tell everyone listening, watching, there is only one reason. So Trevor, I don't know if it'll necessarily stop, but I'll tell you why it's happening. Mm-hmm. The only reason why these people that we label as jerks make it to the top is because the company values results over anything else, and they reward bad behavior. And here's how you can tell if you're doing it. If you go inside an organization and you look up their performance reviews, and there's nothing on their performance review besides just number-based. Did you hit this number? Did you hit this goal? Yeah. And we're not measuring people on how they treat each other or how they live the values. Then all you say that you care about as an organization are the results. And you will promote people that are hard ass, that are drivers, that are going to get numbers, but sometimes run over people, leave a trail of bodies behind them. And so this is where executives always say, are you promoting the people, yes, that get results, but also live the culture that you say that you stand for? And so to your point, I do think the organizations with the best culture, where people enjoy going to work, they enjoy each other, will be able to do both. They will get results, but they will also hold people accountable to say, if you're going to grow in this organization, you also got to be mindful of how you treat people and how you and live the culture and what we say we stand for.
There's certain leaders that I know right now that are doing well and not getting as promoted as fast as they would like. And it makes me think when you say that, Justin, because that is impacting their behavior. Because now it's like, oh, so I'm kicking butt on the numbers, and my main team likes me here, but my overall, I guess, style is not complementary to the main core values all the time. Maybe there's some areas, and sometimes it's just tweaks, right? Like it's not, we're good. They're good people. Yeah. It's just tweaking some of the behavior and how they're making other people feel, and that whole awareness of others.
Yeah. I think there's an exercise I do with everyone when I'm working or coaching them where we say, do you know who you are at your best? And the reason that answer is important is because I have never had one executive in manufacturing ever say, at my best, I'm condescending, arrogant, and a jerk. No one has ever said that, right? But let me tell you, you go ask people on the line, or you go ask people in, wherever, and say, give me some words to describe this. They're like condescending, arrogant, jerk, right? Yeah. There's a disconnect. What I believe that is, I think we've walked out of the truth of who we are. I think our job is to come home to ourselves. See, I think that a lot of people listen to podcasts, go to conferences, read books, whatever. And I think the message they sometimes get, Trevor, is that they need to change. I fundamentally disagree. I think we walk out of the truth of who we are. And then when we walk out for so long, I think we forget who we are. So when you say to yourself, when you think about a time in your life you showed up your best, tell me about a time. And somebody will tell you that moment, right? And then say, what were the 3 actions that you were demonstrating when you were being able to do that, to allowed you to do that? So I would tell you, I'm confident, I'm fully present, and I'm empathetic. And I'll tell you, when I'm at my best, speaking in my relationship with my partner, taking care of my mom as a caretaker, whatever it is, I realized when I'm at my best, I am present, I'm confident, and I'm empathetic. But I'm human. And there are times that I walk out of my truth, right? Yeah. But knowing that vision allows me to know when I've walked out. And then all I got to do is come home to myself. And so part of creating trust with people is to have enough self-awareness to know, do I know who I am at my best? Do I know when I walk out of it? And when I do, can I come home to myself? But you got to have an answer for who you are at your best if you're ever going to be able to do that.
I love that. It's kind of like in purchasing world, you can have it fast, you can have it cheap, or you can have great quality. You get 2 of the 3. But like in that formula, you can be confident, you can be present, but if you're missing empathy, you're still a jerk.
Yeah.
Totally. So it's like you need those 3 together, because when you're confident, you're showing up as who you are.
Well, right? I think that answer is the definition of authentic leadership. I will never go to anywhere and tell somebody, this is how you all need to show up. I want someone to say, this is who I am at my best. And then our job is to say, how do we help cultivate more of that for the individual and help them show up more as who they already are versus feeling like they need to change. Let me give you an example in manufacturing. It's coaching a leader who's like, I need to get better at relationships, treating people right. That's the togetherness piece of trust, transparency, tact, togetherness
Nice.
is making them feel like they're part of a team. He wasn't good at it. So I said, okay, so talk to me about what leaders in manufacturing that are really good at togetherness, what do? And he'll say a bunch of stuff. And then I'll say, just give me one action that you would commit to this week that you would do if you were really focused on that. And then they do it. And every time a week later, they come back, they're like, I can't believe it. This stuff works, and what happens is it might feel foreign to them, but when you say at my best, I'm kind or I'm empathetic, well, then I need to make sure that your actions are congruent and aligned to that. And what would that look like in the process? So that question for everybody listening or watching, such an important question to be able to answer for yourself, because we don't want to teach you to be someone else. It's like, how do we help you be more of who you already are in that process?
Yeah, that works. I know it works because I have a wonderful president that I got the privilege to work with that is very smart and very respected and just, really was in the office a lot and didn't interact with people, but super self-aware of like, I know who I am. I know how I'm impacting others because I'm not engaging with them very much and I'm newer into this role. And just the fact that, hey, simple stuff like just walking through the office and saying good morning on a regular basis.
Right. Easy stuff.
Yeah. And it's simple, but if you're not intentional, it's hard to do because this is what I've told them is I said, there's other leaders that have gone their whole career that have just never taken those steps.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and what I love that you're saying, Trevor, is that trust is built in these really small moments. I want everyone to hear that. Trust is not these big things like, let's go take a big annual celebration every year or, whatever. Those things, I love those. Those are great. But trust is built in the small moments. It's walking in the office and saying hello. It's sending someone a thank you email or a note. Just saying, hey, when you stepped up and did that, it really meant a lot to me. It's looking at your partner saying, I don't tell you enough that I love you. And I just want to remind you that. Sometimes I forget because I get so busy being busy. Right. Or it's looking at your kiddos at home and just saying, hey, what was the highlight of your day today? Right. It's these little things that we do as long as we're intentional about them and we have to do them consistently that build trust with people. So it's reminding people that it doesn't take a lot, these big actions. It's saying to someone, hey, I'm sorry, or apologizing when we need to, or leaning into a tough conversation that we've been putting off because we didn't know how it was going to go, but we love the relationship enough to have it. So I just love that reminder that trust is always built in these small moments.
Built in the small moments. Yeah. Justin, sometimes I struggle with the other side. And what I've had to learn is that I feel like, oh, well, I know of this person. And then I don't overshare uncomfortably, but I do like get right into it with someone that maybe I haven't built that much with. Yeah. So I think it's kind of like, it's always meeting people where they're at, right? Is that what's your?
Yeah. Listen, I do think we can all overshare, and I feel like I always use the analogy. If you've ever been on a date and we're like, you're trying to get to know each other, I'm like, no one can handle all of your truth right away. No one. It doesn't matter who you are. It'll be too much for someone, right? So I do think we have to have the discernment to know, has the person earned the right to hear this? Are they at a point in the relationship where I feel that this is appropriate? And so I do think you can overshare and be too transparent too quickly, or make other people uncomfortable. And I know that might not be intention. So I do think you got to have some discernment about it. So yeah, I definitely think it can happen. I've seen it happen a lot.
I mean, it does. The more you're aware of that other person, because it's kind of like sometimes I can talk to someone and they're like, okay, they're kind of like me. They're kind of opening up too. And that's what I try to do is kind of gauge, okay, so I've shared a little bit. They're not really sharing too much. So, because I've gotten feedback before where it's like, no, I could tell that, I kind of came across maybe arrogant, and that was not my core value, but it's how I made them feel.
Yeah. Well, and let's think back to business. I think sometimes in business, leaders have to be transparent if they want trust, but there is a level that you can, there's only a level of transparency that you can offer. You also have to protect the company. And so I can't tell you everything and every decision and what's going to happen, because I also have to protect other people. I got to protect the organization to make sure that we are going to set the organization up for success. So I do think there's a level of discernment. I will never buy to say, oh, we can't tell them. I think you can always say something. You
Yes.
can give people a heads up. You don't have to say every detail. I think you share as much as you can while still honoring the relationship, whether it's the organization, the person. And so, but that takes a level of discernment that you got to be able to have.
I remember the one was, we'd be having a management meeting about, I don't know, something like the overtime coming up, maybe a pay change, I don't know.
Oh.
And someone would say, hey, do you know what's going on with this? And sometimes we're trained just to say no.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like, well, I can't, I'm not a good white liar.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, we are having conversations on that. And in respect to you and everyone else, really, you should hear that from the CEO, right?
Yeah.
So he's going to share that message. I don't want to share anything with you. So it's like, I'm still being truthful, but I'm also being respectful in that discernment.
Well, I was working with a restaurant company that during the pandemic, they changed their bonus structure and they went out and told their people, we're going to change it. And this is what we're doing. There were so many questions left unanswered. The company left the employees second guessing. Well, let me tell you, the one thing you don't want to leave people second guessing about is their money, right?
Their money.
Because they got to take care of families, pay their bills. So the next week I was speaking at their competitor in that town. And I didn't tell them the organization. I just gave this example. The executive comes up to me and says, I want you to know that 2 of those people from that company have already applied here this week. And what happened, trust does not leave people second guessing. And when you leave people second guessing, they'll often go to where there's more security or where somebody can give them the transparency that they're looking for. And so it's just an easy example of, you might not be able to give every detail, but I love that you said, hey, we're talking about it. I don't know what all that means right now, but I promise you, when I have more information, I can share it. You'll be one of the first people to know. Like, that's what we do. And that's what we do as leaders, because we love the relationship enough to be truthful with people.
So this is one of your taglines here, I believe. Choose discomfort over resentment.
Yeah. I'm a big believer that you got to have kind of a mantra that serves you well in life. For me, the one I use a lot is love people enough to tell the truth. That's really served me well, because sometimes I might have difficult conversations.
Yeah.
So whatever, right?
Coming from love, man.
Yeah, right. So love them enough to love the relationship enough to tell them the truth about what you need, what you want, what you're thinking about. This is why so many couples, I think, end up falling apart. They stop talking and they stop telling each other what they think they need, what they want. Where I was actually teaching a class and in manufacturing, and this person raises their hand and their mantra was choose discomfort over resentment. And I was like, oh my, it's like, throw that person a baby, y'all. It was so good. And it resonated with so many people in that room. Would you be willing to choose short-term discomfort, right? I don't want to have the conversation, but I know I need to, because the only way we're going to repair this or get through this is to talk about it, over I know if I don't, I'm going to get resentful and I'm going to pull back anyways. So are we willing to choose discomfort over resentment? It's a really good question to ask yourself sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. I don't want to have the conversation. Like, a lot of times it's like, yeah, this is not my number one choice, but is it the right thing? Do I care about this person enough to take some time out and, have that conversation?
Yeah. I want to be clear to everyone listening and watching, though. I also think there is a time to be silent. So I'm not going back to not oversharing. Yeah. Here's the question. I don't know if it'll resonate, Trevor, but this is what I ask myself. If I don't speak up right now in this moment, will I still be as kind and loving? And this is why I ask myself that, because there are times that I'm like, that did not sit well with me, but I know that I'm going to get over it because it was just a little bit of a moment, right? Yes. So to me, because you can't bring up everything to your boss. You can't bring up everything to it would be this is why I work with some people that are exhausting. They exhaust people because everything is an issue. Everything is a thing. And I'm like, okay, I love that, but maybe that's a you issue, right? Where you say, I can get over this in an hour or 10 minutes or a minute or tomorrow, whatever. So maybe for me, it's not my hill to die on. But if I know that that is so serious that if I don't talk about it with you, I'm going to start pulling back, and I don't want to do that. Then I owe it to the relationship to actually say something, whether that's the CEO, whether that's my manager, whether that's a team member, my partner, my friend, my spouse. It doesn't matter. I have to love the relationship enough to know that if I'm going to pull back, then I love the relationship enough to bring it up. If not, maybe I just be quiet. I'm not always the best at being quiet. I wrote that question for myself for a reason.
Are you serving your formal
I'm
self too,
like,
Justin?
can we talk about this? But I really practice what I preach and write. But that's why I have to have those questions for myself to say, if I don't bring it up, well, I'll be as kind and loving.
Yeah.
And if so, like, this is my stuff, I'm gonna be over it tomorrow, right? Then okay, then don't bring it up, So it's, yeah.
Well, I've told my daughter Paige about you. So I just was in New York. She got her master's in education and does not want to teach again.
Yeah.
And I said, man, some of the great people that I know started out as teachers, and it's interesting. I can see that now, right? On how, whether you're teaching yourself or with your background in teaching, it's amazing what you're doing now, man. And your new book just came out this week.
Yeah, we'll
Supposed to get delivered. A high impact manager. It's supposed to get delivered here today.
Awesome.
I got the book report on our website for Your Road to Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's the one that we're mainly talking about today. But then your other points here through the high impact manager, we're going to put that in the show notes as well. I encourage you to check that out. I mean, Justin's work is man, you've been impactful to me. You know that, and I really appreciate. You've always been transparent. One of my first talks, you critiqued, and it was fantastic. But I knew that, hey, man, this guy's taking time out to make me better. And and we didn't even know each other that well, but I could feel it. It's like, this dude's just trying to help me. So I think you do that naturally. And so for the people driving into work today, they say, hey, I just heard Justin Patton, and they say, hey, what do you take away from that podcast? What do you want them to remember, Justin?
Yeah, I'm gonna give them two things.
All right.
One is, I want you to remember that every choice you're about to make today is a choice either towards trust or away from trust. Those are our only two options, everybody. And so I would challenge you to say, in every choice you make, the email you're about to send where you are angry and you are upset, or the text message you're not sending that you probably should, every choice you're about to make is either going to get you as a closer to trust, or it is going to push you further away. So I want you to ask yourself today, when you're making these choices, what choice would I make if I was focused on trust? That's it. What choice would I make if I was focused on trust? And then whatever that answer is, let that be your guide. And I guess my only other second thing is, I am such a believer that just as human beings, it is, we know that loneliness is becoming an epidemic. And so I'm a big believer that, how do we make each other feel seen? And so my invitation or my challenge to all the viewers and the watchers out there is to say, can you do one thing today to make someone feel seen? Whether that's just having empathy for them, whether that's holding the door open for someone, or like you said, Trevor, I go in the office and I say, hey, what was how was your weekend? What'd you do? And just taking a moment to be present for people, or leave someone a thank you note, or send a text to say, hey, I know you're going through a lot and it's not easy, but you're just on my heart and I just wanted to tell you. I just want you to find one moment today to make someone feel seen. And I think when we do that every day, or we are consistent about making people feel seen, I think it not only changes that other person's life, I think it changes our experience of how we show up, and makes life way more meaningful. So those would be my two thoughts.
Beautiful. It's all about those small moments, those
Yeah.
little moments. Justin, I'm such a fan, man. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your message with our audience. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Hey folks, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.